Is there anything you would like to have told your younger self, thinking back?
Gosh. Yeah, don't be an idiot. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Hindsight's always 20/20, right? I think everybody has that thought in their mind, man, if I could go back and tell myself or change something in my life. But then you have to think about, okay, some of those things were things that helped me to grow. But I think the things that really, if I could be impactful to my younger self, would be, I grew up in an era where a lot of the things like marijuana and some of the heavier drugs, for the time, we didn't know a lot of the stuff that we know now, right? And we treated it almost like a rite of passage to do those things, underage drinking, whatnot, not knowing the potential for the long-term damage. I think those are things that, if I could have had an impact, I would have hoped I would have listened to me. But yeah, I mean, those are the things I think I would have probably gone back and changed. It says, don't be an idiot. These things do affect you. They can be harmful, long-term and short-term. I think it's everybody's fears. There's a little bit of fear. And I think that the fear of the unknown, but I think it starts out as, when you're a kid, you don't ever think about the future. And then as you keep getting further, and for me, that fear didn't really come in until probably my early 20s, like, ooh, the future, because I didn't think that far ahead. And I think I'm not too dissimilar from a lot of kids, in that age group, is that all of a sudden life was thrust on me. And now I'm finding out what it's like to be an adult. But again, I was unique because I had loving parents. I didn't have to worry about where's my next meal coming from. I didn't have to worry about, am I going to be able to get to school, or am I going to have a pair of shoes or clean clothes to wear? So my trials and my fears are completely different than other kids that might have had those very fears. Is there going to be food on the table tomorrow? Am I going to have something clean to wear? And if I don't, I'm not going to want to go to school because I want to get ridiculed for being stinky or dirty or whatever. So my fears are completely different, just like everybody's fears about when they're youth are different. But I mean, I certainly feared later in my teens, what the future would hold. What am I going to do with myself? What am I going to go to college? Am I going to go to work? Am I going to do the military? Am I going to do this or that? But I think on the whole, my parents were very good about eliminating a lot of those fears in my life. I had wonderful parents, and I had their support in a lot of the stuff I did, and they were there to guide me and direct me. And one of the things I appreciated was my dad was my guidance counselor in high school. And a lot of people are like, oh, how'd you like that? And I was an idiot in high school. I did dumb stuff. And I didn't appreciate it then, but I certainly appreciate it now that my dad let me be dumb and make mistakes without intervening. Now, obviously, I think if I would have done something majorly stupid, he might have, but he let me trip my way through my youth. All the while being a support in the background. And the thing about it is not everybody has a mother or father or grandparent or guardian there that will do that. But I've worked in the schools for many years. And the one thing I know is that there are at least a half a dozen people in every kid's life that will be that support for them. They may not be that familiar support that I refer to, but there's always there in the background. And sometimes it's as simple as just reaching out or being willing to accept that advice or that help. But as far as, major things in my life, mistakes, sure. Do I wish I would have done things differently? When it comes to major mistakes, sure, absolutely. But again, it got me to where I am now. Everybody says, you wait till you're a parent, and I'm, as a father of 8, and my kids range from 30 to 7, I have absolutely walked in my father's shoes, and I've absolutely seen the trials and the struggles that he had as a parent, trying to parent an idiot son, right? And it absolutely changed my perspective on the challenges that they faced with me, and how to navigate, me as a 16-year-old. So my appreciation for my parents was not, and my admiration for my parents was not always there. That has matured and nurtured over my life. It's funny, my oldest kids, who now have kids of their own, used to ask me all kinds of questions about when I was a kid. What did you do? How come you won't tell us? And I always told them, I said, the mistakes I made in the past shouldn't have a variant on the mistakes you make, or shouldn't give you permission to make the same mistakes. And I said, I don't hide my mistakes from you so you think I'm perfect. I don't tell you my mistakes because I did this doesn't give you the right to go do it because I turned out the way I did or didn't turn out. You have to make choices in your life, and then you have to answer those choices regardless of your parents there or not. And I think the most practical, and this isn't my information, this isn't something I think, but you have to govern and teach your children. And governance, I don't mean that in a but you have to teach your children correct principles, and then they have to be able to go out and apply those in their life. You can't live their life for them. But if my kids watch this, I think we've had open and honest conversation. I don't think there's anything here that would be shocking or revelatory to them. But just tell them, you have to apply, which is rare sometimes in the world we live in, but you have to apply a level of common sense. And you have to measure your decisions on a flat line and not on an emotional curve, right? Because we'll all make poor choices when we decide based on emotion. So we have to know what that baseline is, and then be able to measure our decisions on that baseline so that we minimize some of the bad choices we make. We're never going to eliminate them. You don't have to be put in a box, right? I think a lot of times youth, because of family circumstances or environmental or social environments or whatever, they put themselves into a box and they don't ever feel like they can get out of that box. And we see it a lot with youth and negative things that perpetuate through generational. I would tell myself, you can do whatever you want to do. And I know that's really cliche, and we tell people that all the time. But I mean, it's true. I mean, sometimes we do things in our youth that put up roadblocks for the future. And we feel like that's the end all be all. But whenever there's a roadblock, there's always a way around it. And there's always another path that can get us to the future that we want to be at. It just maybe took a different path. But sometimes I feel like as a youth, we do something, or something in our life changes, and we feel like that door in our future is closed, and it's not. There's so many avenues to take, and something you want to do today when you're 16 may not be what you want to do when you're 19, and that's okay too. But I would probably tell myself, work towards something, and if it changes, it's okay. You're going to hear, you're going to hear, go to school, you're going to hear, get an education, you're going to hear all these things. And all those things are true, and those things will have a really powerful impact on their life, 100%. But also remember that there are different avenues to get your goal. And not all of them go through a college degree, and not all of them go through the military, and not all of them go through other avenues. There are a lot of avenues. So don't let anybody put you in a box. Don't let anybody tell you that this is the only way to get what you want. And I think that's evident, especially when you look at social media and all these things. You see these kids, and I call them kids because they're 18 to mid-20s that are making a lot of money following their dreams. So I don't ever want to limit anybody's ability to dream. I think you have to have a part of yourself that's always looking for that, and then also apply a level of common sense to that task. And actually, I'm going to change that. I'm going to say, don't make it a dream, because we never attain dreams. Make it a goal, and then make a list of how you're going to achieve the goal. Let's get rid of dreams. Dreams are wishes that are unfulfilled. We all dream about winning the lottery, right?
Yeah.
It never happens. But if we set a goal towards something and then you work at the goal, you're far more apt to attain that than you are about just wishing for it or hoping for it. You know, as the gray hairs creep onto your head and those mystery aches show up in the morning that you're like, why am I sore? You can look back like, I remember thinking and it's now having the knowledge to back it up. We know that, you know, your brain is still developing all the way up into like your late 20s. And because of that, that's why the most risk takers are in that age group, because they have no true sense of danger. And maybe that's not the right, but they have, you know, they feel like they're invincible. They feel like I can do anything. And that's good in a lot of ways, because some amazing things have come to this world as a result of that thinking. And some pretty bad things have come to this world. So, you know, you've got to live your life, but you have to do it with a measure of you have to live your life and live it with a measure of equilibrium, right? Like it just, I think we get in trouble as a society when we start making decisions similar to what I just said on those ebbs and flows of life.